The galactic assemblies were typically boring affairs. Mind-numbingly, soul-crushingly boring. The kind of boring that makes you question your life choices and wonder if permanent hibernation might be a viable career alternative. But as Chief Security Officer Trazix Valon of the Century Guard, I had attended exactly 347 such assemblies. I counted each one, scratching tally marks into my personal datapad like a prisoner marking days until release. Today would be number 348, and I had a feeling it would be memorable for all the wrong reasons. Another day, another assembly where nothing happens. I grumbled to my deputy, Glaz, as we performed our standard security sweep of the Grand Hall on Station Nexus 9. Glaz flicked her antennae in amusement. "Come now, sir. Remember last cycle when Ambassador Plu-Unk accidentally sat on Ambassador Zilthrop's ceremonial crest hat? That was exciting. That was 3 years ago, Glaz, and the diplomatic incident that followed cost us 6 months of trade negotiations with the Zilthropian collective. Still, it broke the monotony," she chirped. I sighed and continued my inspection. Every species had the right to bear their traditional weaponry during assemblies. It was an ancient privilege dating back to the founding of the Galactic Confederation. The Draxians carried their ceremonial plasma daggers. The Vorticans brought their sonic disruptors. Even the pacifist Lumidians carried their light-bending crystals, which could blind an opponent temporarily if needed. Everyone had weapons. Everyone except humans. The ban on human weaponry was enacted precisely 42 cycles ago, after what became known as the Geneva Incident. A story told to young security officers as a cautionary tale. A story I had witnessed firsthand. "Officer Valon? The human delegation has arrived," announced Quib, our technician, through my earpiece. "Wonderful," I muttered. "How many?" "3. Ambassador Liam Mercer, his aide Aisha Khan, and a new military attaché, Colonel Drake Harrington." I groaned. "A military attack? Fantastic. Just what we need." The humans had been pushing for a revision of the weapons ban for years. Sending a military attack was their not-so-subtle way of pushing the agenda again. "Shall I perform the standard security protocols, sir?" asked Glaz. "Glaz. Extra thorough today," I replied. "I want every microscopic particle on their bodies scanned. Humans are resourceful." As we approached the docking bay, I straightened my uniform and prepared my face for the diplomatic smile I'd perfected over centuries of service. The airlock cycled open, and 3 humans stepped through. Ambassador Mercer was a familiar face, tall, gray-haired, with the practiced smile of a career diplomat. His aide Khan was younger, sharp-eyed, and carried a datapad that probably contained enough information to fill the great library of Andromeda. But it was the 3rd human who caught my attention. Colonel Harrington stood at perfect attention, his posture rigid. His eyes systematically scanned the room, cataloging potential threats with military precision. I recognized the look. I wore it myself every day. "Ambassador Mercer," I greeted, extending my 3-fingered hand. "Welcome back to Station Nexus 9, Chief Security Officer Valon," Mercer replied, shaking my hand firmly. "Always a pleasure. May I introduce Colonel Drake Harrington? He's replacing General Okoye as our military attaché." Harrington stepped forward. "Officer Valon, I have heard much about your security protocols. They are apparently quite thorough." There was something in his tone, a hint of challenge perhaps, that made my scales tingle with apprehension. "Standard procedure, Colonel." "I'm sure you understand," I replied, gesturing toward the scanning archway. "If you would proceed through security." The humans complied without complaint, which was unusual. Typically, there was at least a token protest about dignity and diplomatic immunity. Their compliance made me more suspicious, not less. As the scanner did its work, Glaz monitored the readings while Quib processed the data. Everything seemed normal until... "Sir," Quib's voice carried a note of confusion. "The scanner is picking up something unusual from the Colonel." I kept my diplomatic smile firmly in place. "Is that so?" "It's not registering as a known weapon, but there's definitely something anomalous." I approached Harrington directly. Colonel, our scanners are detecting something unusual. Care to explain? Harrington's face remained impressively neutral. I'm carrying no weapons, Officer Vallon, as per your regulations. Then you wouldn't mind a manual inspection? A flash of "was that amusement?" crossed his face. Not at all. Our manual inspection revealed nothing. No hidden compartments in his uniform, no suspicious implants, nothing that could be classified as a weapon under Confederation law. Yet the scanner continued to register an anomaly. Perhaps your equipment needs calibration, suggested Ambassador Mercer helpfully. Perhaps, I agreed, though I didn't believe it for a second. The equipment had been calibrated that morning. You may proceed to the assembly hall. Your security escort will show you to your designated area. As they walked away, Glaz leaned in. What do you think, sir? I think humans are up to something, I replied quietly. They always are. The assembly proceeded with its usual tedious formality. Speeches were made, trade agreements were discussed, and border disputes were arbitrated. I divided my attention between the overall security of the hall and keeping an eye on Colonel Harrington. The military attached sat perfectly still, his attention seemingly focused on the proceedings. But I noticed how his eyes occasionally scanned the room, his gaze lingering on the various weapons carried by other delegations. A particularly long-winded speech by the Zenthorian ambassador about methane mining rights. Ambassador Mercer approached the refreshment table where I was stationed. Quite the passionate argument about gas extraction, wouldn't you say? He commented, selecting what appeared to be a gelatinous cube from the assortment of multi-species compatible refreshments. Indeed, I replied neutrally. The Zenthorians are always thorough in their presentations. Mercer chuckled. A diplomatic way of saying they are boring us all to tears. You know, on Earth we have a saying, life's too short for bad coffee and long meetings. Your species' lifespan is indeed relatively short, I observed. Perhaps that's why you humans are always in such a hurry. Or perhaps it's why we understand the value of efficiency, he countered smoothly. Speaking of which, I noticed your scanner seemed confused by Colonel Harrington earlier. I kept my expression professional. A minor technical issue, I'm sure. Of course, Mercer smiled. Though I have always found it fascinating how your Confederation classifies weapons, such a subjective determination. Before I could respond to what was clearly a leading statement, the emergency alarms began blaring. Red lights pulsed through the assembly hall as the automated system announced, "Security breach detected. Unknown entities attempting unauthorized access through southern docking port. All delegates please remain in the secure assembly hall. Security personnel to stations." Finally, something interesting. "Excuse me, Ambassador," I said, already moving toward the command station. "Duty calls." "You..." "Of course," Mercer replied, seeming remarkably unfazed by the emergency. I accessed the security feed at the southern docking port. The situation was worse than I'd expected. A boarding party of krill raiders, notorious pirates and smugglers, had somehow bypassed our outer defenses and were forcing their way through the airlock. "Glaz, Containment Protocol Sigma-7, I ordered. Get a security team to Section 42 immediately." "Sir," she replied, "most of our forces are deployed around the assembly as honor guards. We are severely undermanned for an actual incursion." She was right, of course. Security at galactic assemblies was primarily ceremonial. No one had actually attempted to raid an assembly in over 3 centuries. "Lock down all corridors between sections 40 and 50, I instructed. "That will buy us time to reposition." As I issued orders, I noticed Colonel Harrington standing nearby, observing our operations with keen interest. "Can I assist, Officer Vallon?" he asked. "This is a Confederation security matter, Colonel," I replied firmly. "Please return to your delegation." Harrington didn't move. "I have combat experience that might be valuable in this situation." "Without weapons?" I asked pointedly. A slow smile spread across his face. "You'd be surprised what humans can do without conventional weapons." Before I could respond, Glaz's voice cut through the command channel. Sir, the Krill have breached the first security door. They are armed with pulse rifles and neural disruptors. I made a quick decision. Fine, Colonel. You can observe from the command station. But do not interfere. The situation deteriorated rapidly. The Krill raiders numbered at least 20, all heavily armed and apparently well-informed about our security protocols. They systematically disabled our defense systems and continued advancing toward the assembly hall. They are after the delegates, I realized aloud. With representatives from every major power in the galaxy in one room, the ransom possibilities are endless. Or they could be after something specific, suggested Harrington. That's not standard pirate behavior. That's a tactical strike. I hated to admit it, but he had a point. The raiders were moving with military precision, not the chaotic approach typical of pirate gangs. Sir, Glaz interrupted, her voice tense. Team Bravo is down. The Krill have reached Section 45. They will be at the assembly hall in approximately 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Not enough time to evacuate the delegates. Not enough time for reinforcements from the station's main security hub to arrive. Officer Vallon, Harrington's voice was calm, collected. I'd like to propose a solution. I'm listening, I replied, desperation making me more open to suggestions than I might otherwise have been. Let me and my team handle this. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. Your team? 3 unarmed humans against 20 heavily armed Krill raiders? That's not a solution, Colonel. That's suicide. 4 minutes and 30 seconds remaining, sir, Glaz reported. Harrington leaned in, his voice low. The reason your scanner detected an anomaly, Officer Vallon, is because technically, by your definitions, my entire body is a weapon. I stared at him, uncomprehending. Human military special forces undergo extensive augmentation, he explained rapidly. Neural enhancements, muscular density treatment, skeletal reinforcement. Nothing that registers as an artificial weapon, but enough to make you dangerous, I finished, finally understanding. Very, he confirmed, and Ambassador Mercer and Khan are similarly trained, though with different specializations. I looked at the security feed showing the Krill raiders methodically advancing through the station, then back at the human before me. 3 minutes, sir, Glaz announced, her antennae flat against her head in distress. I made my decision. Do what you can, Colonel. But if you survive this, we are going to have a very long conversation about disclosure protocols. Harrington grinned, a predatory expression that momentarily made me question my decision. Deal. Now, if you will patch me through to my colleagues? I nodded to Glaz, who established a communication link to the assembly hall. Ambassador Mercer, Khan, Harrington spoke clearly. Protocol Chimera is authorized. Through the security feed, I watched as both humans straightened immediately. Mercer touched his ear briefly, acknowledging the message, then whispered something to Khan. Both moved casually toward the exits. What exactly are they going to do? I asked, suddenly nervous. Harrington was already moving toward the door. What humans do best, Officer Vallon. Improvise. What followed was both terrifying and, I must admit, impressive. The 3 humans positioned themselves at strategic points along the raiders' approach. Using nothing but the environment and their apparently enhanced bodies, they began systematically dismantling the Krill forces. Mercer, the elderly diplomat, moved with the speed and precision of a predator in its prime. He used the station's maintenance shafts to ambush raiders from above, incapacitating them with strikes to vulnerabilities in Krill physiology that I hadn't realized were common knowledge. Khan manipulated the station's environmental systems, creating localized pressure differentials and temperature fluctuations that disoriented the raiders, making them easy targets for Harrington's frontal assault. And Harrington, he moved like no being I had ever seen. Each motion was economical, precise, and devastatingly effective. He used the raiders' own weapons against them, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to disarm and disable opponents before they could react. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized. 20 krill raiders lay unconscious or restrained throughout the station's corridors. No casualties, not even among the raiders themselves. When it was over, I found Harrington standing calmly in Section 43, surrounded by unconscious pirates, not even breathing heavily. Situation resolved. Officer Vallon, he reported formally, as if he hadn't just single-handedly overcome odds that would have been impossible for any other species. I stared at him, then at the fallen raiders, then back at him. How did you know exactly where to strike them? Krill physiology isn't common knowledge. Harrington shrugged. Part of our preparation for this assignment included studying the physiological vulnerabilities of all major species in Confederation space. Standard protocol. Standard, I couldn't even finish the sentence. Colonel, there are over 300 sapient species in Confederation space. 342 recognized species, yes, he confirmed. Though the file on Centaurians was a bit incomplete. Their methane sacs are apparently more dorsally positioned than our briefing indicated. I felt a chill run down my spine. In that moment, I understood exactly why humans weren't permitted to carry weapons in galactic assemblies. They didn't need them. They were the weapons. As we returned to the assembly hall, where Mercer and Khan were calmly reassuring the other delegates that the situation had been resolved, I made a mental note to update the official security protocols. The ban on human weapons wasn't strict enough. Perhaps we needed to ban humans entirely. But as I watched Harrington rejoin his delegation, I wondered if even that would be sufficient. After all, how do you defend against a species that turns their entire existence into a weapon? The rest of the assembly proceeded without incident, though I noticed the other delegates giving the human delegation a wider berth than before. Word had spread quickly about their role in neutralizing the threat. As the humans prepared to depart at the conclusion of the assembly, Ambassador Mercer approached me once more. I trust today's excitement has given you something to think about, Officer Vallon, he said quietly. Indeed it has, Ambassador, I replied. Though perhaps not the lesson you intended. Mercer smiled. Oh, I think it was exactly the lesson we intended. The ban on human weapons has never been about the weapons themselves, has it? I met his gaze directly. No, I admitted. It hasn't. Perhaps at the next assembly, we can discuss revising certain protocols, he suggested. After all, today demonstrated that we can be quite useful in a crisis. It also demonstrated why many species find humans terrifying, Ambassador. Mercer's smile didn't waver. Protection often comes with a healthy dose of deterrence, Officer Vallon. Something to consider. As I watched their ship depart, I couldn't help but wonder, in trying to contain the human threat by banning their weapons, had the Confederation merely encouraged them to become something far more dangerous? My datapad chimed with an incoming message. The next Galactic Assembly was scheduled for 3 months from now. Number 349. I had a feeling it would be anything but boring. 3 months passed quicker than a Vexillion quantum leap. Station Helios Prime orbited the neutral star Arcturus, its massive ring structure accommodating representatives from every corner of the Confederation. As Chief Security Officer, I had been transferred here following the incident at Nexus 9. My superiors called it a promotion. I recognized it for what it was, keeping me close to the developing human situation. Nervous, sir? Glaz asked as we performed our final security sweep before delegates began arriving. Merely vigilant, I replied, though my scales had taken on the faint purplish tint that betrayed anxiety in my species. The humans are bringing a larger delegation this time, 6 representatives instead of 3. Glaz's antennae twitched. The Council approved this? The Council had little choice after what happened at Nexus 9, I said. The humans leveraged their role in preventing the Krill incursion quite effectively. What I didn't mention was my growing suspicion that the entire Krill raid had been orchestrated precisely to showcase human capabilities. I had no proof, just decades of security experience and an uncomfortable feeling in my tertiary stomach. Officer Vallon, my comm unit chimed. Human delegation arriving at Docking Bay 7. Acknowledged, I replied. Implement Security Protocol Omega-49. Glaz looked at me sharply. Sir, that's the protocol for high-risk delegations, typically reserved for the Vorn hegemony or Q-Lari dominion. I'm well aware, Deputy, I said, already moving toward the docking bay, and yet still inadequate for what we are facing. The human delegation was indeed larger this time. Ambassador Mercer and Colonel Harrington were familiar faces, as was Aide Khan. The newcomers included Dr. Eliza Novak, identified as a xenobiological consultant, Commander Terrence Washington, another military attaché, and diplomat Lucia Reyes, who specialized in Confederation law. An interesting mix. A concerning mix. Ambassador Mercer, I greeted, extending my hand as humans preferred. Welcome to Station Helios Prime, Officer Vallon, he replied warmly. What a pleasant surprise. I didn't expect to see you here after Nexus 9. The Confederation values experience, I said simply, particularly with unique security challenges. Harrington smiled at that, the expression not reaching his eyes. I trust your security systems have been upgraded since our last meeting. Extensively, I confirmed. You will find our scanning technology has been specifically calibrated to detect human physiological enhancements. That wiped the smile from his face, which gave me a small measure of satisfaction. Really? Dr. Novak stepped forward, eyes bright with scientific curiosity. I'd be fascinated to learn how you have managed to distinguish between natural human physical advantages and artificial enhancements. The baseline variance in human physiology makes that extraordinarily difficult even for our own scientists. Her enthusiasm seemed genuine, which somehow made it more unsettling. Perhaps we can discuss it after you have cleared security, I suggested, gesturing toward our newly installed scanning archway. The humans proceeded through the scanner one by one. As expected, alarms blared for Harrington and Washington. More surprisingly, they also triggered for Dr. Novak. A scientist with military enhancements? I questioned. Novak shrugged. I do field work in extreme environments. The enhancements are survival-focused, not combat-oriented. Nevertheless, they exceed our permitted thresholds, I stated. You will be required to wear neural dampeners during the assembly. I expected protests. Instead, Mercer nodded agreeably. Of course. We understand your concerns and are happy to comply with reasonable security measures. Their compliance was more alarming than resistance would have been. Humans never surrendered an advantage unless they had another hidden in reserve. As neural dampening bracelets were fitted to Harrington, Washington, and Novak, I noticed Ambassador Mercer examining the device with casual interest. Fascinating technology, he commented. Selectively inhibits enhanced neural pathways without affecting natural functions. May I ask who developed it? The Tellurian technocracy, I replied, with significant input from the Confederation Security Council. Ah, Mercer nodded. The Tellurians. Brilliant bioengineers. We have recently established a cultural exchange program with them. Shared research initiatives, primarily in medical applications. The subtle threat wasn't lost on me. If humans gain Tellurian bioengineering knowledge, our dampeners would quickly become obsolete. Once the security protocols were complete, I escorted the human delegation to the assembly hall. The massive chamber was already filling with representatives from across the galaxy. As we entered, conversations hushed momentarily as delegates took note of the humans. News of Nexus 9 had spread. The humans were now objects of both fear and fascination. Your seating section is there. I indicated a designated area near the podium. The assembly will begin in 20 minutes. Thank you, Officer Vallon, Mercer said. Oh, I should mention, we will be presenting a formal proposal today regarding the weapons restriction on humans. Of course they would. I look forward to hearing it, I lied, then retreated to my security station. The assembly began with the usual ceremonies and preliminaries. Species-specific atmospheric bubbles activated for delegates with exotic breathing requirements. Translation systems hummed quietly, converting the cacophony of languages into comprehensible communications for each attendee. When the formal session opened for new proposals, Ambassador Mercer approached the central podium. The chamber quieted as he adjusted the microphone to his height. The distinguished delegates of the Galactic Confederation, he began, his voice carrying the practiced resonance of a seasoned diplomat. For 42 cycles, humanity has honored the restriction preventing us from carrying weapons in these assemblies. Today I come before you to request a reconsideration of this policy. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Not a complete removal of restrictions, Mercer clarified, raising a placating hand, but rather a modification that acknowledges both the Confederation's security concerns and humanity's right to defensive capabilities. Clever. Starting with a moderate position would make the humans seem reasonable. The events at Station Nexus 9 demonstrated that humans can contribute significantly to Confederation security, Mercer continued. Indeed, without human intervention, many of you might not be present today. More murmurs, these ones thoughtful. The humans had indeed saved many important lives during the Krill incursion. Therefore, we propose a limited exception to the weapons ban, allowing certified human security personnel to carry non-lethal defensive implements during assemblies. The draconian representative rose immediately. Her objection. The ban exists for good reason. The Geneva incident occurred 42 cycles ago under very different circumstances, Mercer interrupted smoothly. Circumstances that, if examined closely, might appear quite different from the official record. Now that was interesting and concerning. Ambassador Mercer, the arbitrator of the assembly, a venerable Kin-Tal elder, spoke. Are you suggesting the official account of the Geneva incident is inaccurate? Mercer's expression remained diplomatic, but I detected something else beneath it. Determination, perhaps, or righteous anger, carefully controlled. I am suggesting, honored arbitrator, that the full context of the incident was never made public, and that decisions made in its aftermath were based on fear rather than fact. The assembly erupted in voices. The Geneva incident had shaped Confederation policy toward humans for decades. Questioning the official account was tantamount to questioning the foundation of human Confederation relations. As the arbitrator called for order, I noticed Colonel Harrington watching me. When our eyes met, he gave a small nod toward the service corridor behind the security station. An invitation. Curiosity overcame caution. I signaled Glaz to take over and slipped away to the corridor. Harrington was waiting. His posture relaxed despite the neural dampener on his wrist. You have questions, Officer Vallon, he said. Not a query, but a statement of fact. Several I acknowledged. Beginning with why Ambassador Mercer would risk diplomatic standing by challenging the official account of Geneva. Because it's time for the truth, Harrington replied. The weapons ban was never about preventing human violence. It was about containing human potential. I scoffed. The record clearly shows that a human delegate attacked the Jorak ambassador unprovoked, using a concealed plasma knife. 3 security officers died containing the situation. The record shows what the Confederation Security Council wanted it to show, Harrington countered. What actually happened was quite different. Enlighten me, I said, making no effort to hide my skepticism. Harrington leaned against the wall. The human delegate was Ambassador Marcus Chen. He didn't attack the Jorak ambassador, he intercepted an assassination attempt against them. That's absurd, I said immediately. There was no assassination attempt at Geneva. Not according to the official record, no, Harrington agreed. But Ambassador Chen detected a biological agent being released near the Jorak delegation, a compound specifically engineered to target Jorak physiology. He used a plasma blade not as a weapon, but as a heat source to neutralize the compound before it could spread. If that were true, why wasn't it reported? Politics, Harrington said simply. The assassination attempt was traced back to elements within the Dreth consensus, who at the time were critical allies in the Confederation's expansion into the Cygnus arm. Publicly acknowledging their involvement would have collapsed that alliance and possibly triggered a civil war within the consensus itself. I processed this. It was plausible, yet, even if true, That doesn't explain why the ban specifically targets humans. If this was a cover-up, why not simply ban all weapons? Because the incident revealed something that frightened the Security Council more than political instability, Harrington said. It revealed that humans can detect threats other species cannot. Explain. Ambassador Chen detected the biological agent by smell. Human olfactory senses are uniquely capable of detecting certain molecular compounds that are imperceptible to Confederation scanning technology. And when questioned how he knew about the attack, Chen had to reveal this previously undisclosed human capability. That's I began, then stopped. Could it be true? Could humans possess sensory capabilities beyond our detection systems? The weapons ban was a convenient solution to a complex problem, Harrington continued. It allowed the Confederation to maintain its alliance with the Dreth while simultaneously restricting human influence by casting us as dangerous and unpredictable. The perfect diplomatic compromise, except for the fact that it was built on a lie. Before I could respond, my comm unit buzzed urgently. Officer Vallon, we have a situation developing in the assembly hall, Glaz's voice reported. I hurried back, Harrington following close behind. In the assembly chamber, the atmosphere had grown tense. Ambassador Mercer was still at the podium, but the Dreth representative had risen and was voicing strident objections. These human accusations are preposterous and defamatory, the Dreth delegate declared. To suggest that our government was involved in an assassination attempt 42 cycles ago without evidence is diplomatic sabotage. We have not accused the current Dreth government of anything, Mercer replied calmly. We merely state that historical records regarding the Geneva incident are incomplete. You insinuate involvement by the Dreth consensus. This is unacceptable. As the argument escalated, I noticed something unusual about the Dreth delegation's security detail. They were positioned strangely, not in standard protective formation around their diplomat, but spaced throughout the chamber near key exits. More concerning, their ceremonial staff weapons appeared to have been modified, with small attachments that hadn't been present during security screening. I keyed my comm unit. Glaz, run a secondary scan on the Dreth security contingent. Focus on their staff weapons. Sir, she responded moments later. Energy readings indicate modifications to standard ceremonial configurations. They appear to be fully functional particle weapons now. Before I could issue an alert, Dr. Novak from the human delegation suddenly stood, sniffing the air intently. Ambassador, she called out sharply to Mercer. Chemical agent detected. Same signature as Geneva. The assembly erupted in panic as Mercer ducked away from the podium. Simultaneously, the Dreth security team raised their staffs, their diplomatic pretense abandoned. Lockdown protocol initiated. I shouted into my comm as I drew my own sidearm. All delegates to secure positions. The first energy blast from a Dreth weapon hit the podium where Mercer had stood moments before, shattering it. Delegates scattered, some diving under tables, others rushing for exits only to find them blocked by armed Dreth operatives. I expected the neural dampeners to keep the enhanced humans contained. I was wrong. Harrington, Washington, and Novak simultaneously triggered some kind of override in their dampening bracelets. The devices sparked briefly, then fell useless to the floor. How? I managed to ask as Harrington moved beside me. Tellurian bioengineering has its limits, he said with a grim smile, especially when you understand it better than they do. What followed was both chaotic and precisely coordinated. The humans moved with frightening efficiency, Harrington and Washington targeting the armed Dreth, while Khan and Reyes organized the evacuation of delegates. Novak raced toward the source of the chemical agent, producing a small device from her pocket that appeared to neutralize it. Most surprisingly, Ambassador Mercer himself fought with the skill of a seasoned warrior in disarming two Dreth operatives using nothing but a ceremonial banner pole he'd pulled from a nearby stand. Within minutes, the Dreth attack force was neutralized. No fatalities, though several delegates and security personnel had sustained injuries from energy weapons. The chemical agent has been contained, Novak reported, returning to where I stood with Harrington. It was targeting the Jorak delegation again, just like at Geneva. History repeating itself, Harrington commented. Not quite, I replied, surveying the chamber. This time there are hundreds of witnesses to what actually happened. As medical teams tended to the injured and security forces secured the Dreth operatives, the assembly slowly regained order. The arbitrator, who had been safely evacuated early in the conflict, returned to the damaged podium. In light of these extraordinary events, the Venerable Qin Tal announced, the assembly will recess for 24 hours. When we reconvene, our first order of business will be a full investigation into today's attack and its apparent connection to the historical Geneva incident. As delegates filed out, still shaken, Ambassador Mercer approached me. "An unfortunate demonstration of our point," he said quietly. "You knew this would happen," I accused. "We suspected," he corrected. "Our intelligence indicated the Dreth extremist faction believed we were going to expose their role in Geneva. They decided to eliminate the Jorak delegation again and frame humanity a second time. So your proposal was bait, a calculated risk," Mercer admitted, "with appropriate safeguards in place." I gestured to the damaged assembly hall. "You call this appropriate?" "Everyone survived," he pointed out, "and now the truth about Geneva will finally come to light. And the weapons restriction on humans will be lifted," I concluded. Mercer's expression turned thoughtful. "Perhaps, but that's not our primary objective." "No?" "Yeah, no," he said firmly. "Our objective is truth. Humans don't want special treatment, Officer Vallon. We want recognition for what we actually are, not what others fear we might be." "And what are you exactly?" I asked. "Protectors," he said simply. "Since before we reached the stars, that's what the best of humanity has always been. Not conquerors, not weapons. Protectors." I considered this as I watched the humans helping injured delegates, organizing cleanup efforts, securing damaged areas. Despite my lingering suspicion, I had to admit there was truth in Mercer's words. 24 hours later, the assembly reconvened in an auxiliary chamber. The atmosphere was subdued but resolute. The arbitrator opened proceedings by announcing the preliminary findings of the investigation. Evidence confirms that extremist elements within the Dreth consensus were responsible for both today's attack and the historically misrepresented Geneva incident. The Qin Tal elder stated, "Ambassador Chen's actions at Geneva have been posthumously recognized as heroic intervention rather than aggression." The Jorak delegation rose in unified acknowledgement, their cranial membranes fluttering in their species' expression of profound respect. In light of these revelations, the arbitrator continued, "The Assembly will now consider revisions to the human weapons restriction. Ambassador Mercer, please present your proposal." Mercer approached the temporary podium, his expression solemn. "Thank you, honored arbitrator. In light of recent events, humanity wishes to propose not the elimination of the weapons restriction, but its fundamental transformation." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the assembly. "We propose the establishment of a Confederation Rapid Response Force, composed of specially trained personnel from all member species, including humans. This force would maintain security at assemblies and respond to threats throughout Confederation space. Under this proposal, humans would still be restricted from carrying traditional weapons during assemblies. However, certified human security personnel would serve alongside other species in the response force, contributing our unique capabilities within a structured framework. The proposal was elegant in its simplicity. Humans would retain their current restrictions but gain official recognition for their security contributions. The Confederation would benefit from human capabilities while maintaining oversight. Debate continued for hours, with various delegations raising concerns and suggesting amendments. Throughout the discussion, I observed the humans carefully. They participated constructively, accepting reasonable limitations and explaining their positions clearly. By the end of the assembly, a modified version of the proposal had been approved. The human weapons restriction would remain in place, but with a new codicil acknowledging the special case of human physiological capabilities and establishing protocols for their constructive use. As the assembly concluded, I found myself alongside Ambassador Mercer once more. A successful outcome, I observed cautiously. For everyone, he agreed. The restriction remains, but its purpose has changed from containment to cooperation. You never actually wanted the restriction lifted entirely, I realized. That was misdirection. Mercer smiled. The ban itself was never the problem, Officer Vallon. It was the reasoning behind it. Humans don't need weapons to be dangerous, as you have observed. But we also don't need weapons to be valuable allies. So the question becomes, I mused, not why humans are forbidden from carrying weapons in galactic assemblies, but why that restriction ultimately doesn't matter, Mercer finished. Because what makes any species truly dangerous or truly helpful isn't the tools they carry. It's what they choose to do with the capabilities they have, I concluded. As the human delegation prepared to depart, Colonel Harrington approached me one final time. Until the next assembly, Officer Vallon, he said, extending his hand. I took it, noting the strength in his grip. I suspect it will be considerably less eventful than the last two. One can hope, he replied with a small smile. Though with humans involved, nothing is ever predictable, I finished. That's our greatest weapon, he acknowledged, and our greatest gift to the Confederation. Watching their ship depart, I updated my personal records. Galactic Assembly number 349, historically significant, diplomatically complex, and against all odds ultimately productive. Perhaps number 350 would be boring after all. But somehow, with humans now officially part of Confederation security, I doubted it. The ban on human weapons remained in place. But now everyone understood the truth behind it. It had never been about the weapons at all.